Hello and welcome to Chapter 5 of the Amazing Maurice. Chapter 5. The Mr. Bunsey Week page we have today says, Ratty Rupert was the bravest rat that ever was. Everyone in Fairy Bottom said so. And how brave will our rats have to be? They're currently traversing these tunnels that we've heard of from sardines, with the piles of poisons and traps. Darktan was in a tunnel, several streets away, hanging from 4 bits of string attached to his harness. They were tied to a stick which had been balanced like a seesaw on the back of a very fat rat. 2 other rats were sitting on the other end, and several other rats were steering it. He was hanging over the big steel trap that filled the tunnel. He signalled for them to stop once he was right above the cheese. Move me in about 2 paws. A rat measurement, about 1 inch. The stick bounced up and down as he was pushed forward. The teeth were about 1 inch away from his nose. He pulled a short piece of wood with a shard of mirror glued to one end out of his belts. You lot move that candle this way a bit, he commanded. With the help of the light, he identifies the trap as a Pratchett Johnson Little Snapper Mark III, with an extra safety catch. A voice piped up from the crowd of watchers. Oh, they're easy. Who said that? Darktan asked sharply. There was silence. He looked over. The young rats had moved aside, leaving one standing very, very alone. Ah, nourishing. Easy, is it? You can show me how it's done then. I mean, Inbrine showed me on the practice trap, and he said, no need to be modest, it's all ready. I will just watch, shall I? But I couldn't see too well when he showed us. Now I come to think of it, and I'll tell you what. I'll work the trap, shall I? Nourishing looked very relieved. And you tell me exactly what to do. Now she looked like a rat ready to rejoin the whittling squad very quickly. She shuddered at the sound of metal on metal as Darktan probed at the trap. Now, where was I? Oh yes, here's a bar and a little spring and a catch. What shall I do now, Miss Nourishing? The thingies. Things are creaking here, Miss Nourishing. You wedged the thingy? Which one was the thingy, Miss Nourishing? You wedged the thingy, the thingy? Maybe it's this big. Snap! Nourishing fainted. Darktan dropped onto the trap. All fixed. I've clipped it firm. It won't go off now. He dropped a lump of hairy cheese onto Nourishing's quivering stomach. It's important in the trap business to be definite. You're definite or you're dead. The second mouse gets the cheese. Darktan unrolled a scrap of paper. He was a rat of action, and the idea that the world could be pinned down in little signs worried him a bit, but he could see how useful it was. When he drew pictures of a tunnel layout, the paper remembered. It didn't get confused by new smells. Other rats, if they knew how to read, could see in their heads what the writer had seen. There was poison marked on the map. Darktan asked Inbrine if he'd seen to it. Buried and whittled on. He's concerned about the amount of poison. There's lots of poison. Darktan advises him that he shouldn't eat dead rats until you know what they died of, or you might die of it as well. Dangerous beings think that they shouldn't eat rats at all, but in the tunnels, you had to be practical. They must really hate rats here, said Inbrine. Darktan didn't answer. There was the smell of fear in the rat runs, and he could feel worry starting deep in his bones. A small rat, out of breath, scurried up the tunnel and crouched in front of him. Kidney, sir, number 3 heavy withless, it burst out. We found a trap, sir, not like the usual sort. Fresh walked right into it. Please come. There was a lot of straw in the loft over the stables, and the heat of the horses coming up from below made it quite snug. Keith was lying on his back, staring at the ceiling and humming to himself. Maurice was watching his lunch, which was twitching its nose. Right up until the time he pounced, Maurice looked like a sleep-killing machine. His rear rose and wiggled, and his tail slashed at the air like a snake, and he dived forward, claws out. Before he eats the mouse, he checks to see if it can talk, something other than squeak. He is quick to assure Keith, who doesn't seem to care half as much as Maurice does, that his meal could not talk, repeatedly. "I believe you," says Keith. They can hear screams in the distance. The rats are still at work. The stable doors opened. A man came in, harnessed 2 of the horses and led them out. Shortly afterwards there was the sound of a coach leaving the yard. A few seconds later there were 3 loud knocks from below. They were repeated, and then they were repeated again. Finally Melissa's voice said, "Are you 2 up there or not?" Keith crawled out of the hay and looked down. Melissa was staring up at him in annoyance. "Yeah? Didn't you hear the secret knock?" "It didn't sound like a secret knock," said Maurice with his mouth full. "You'll have to excuse him," said Keith. "He's eating someone." Maurice objects to this greatly. He hisses and says, "It's not someone unless it can be talk. Otherwise it's just food." Melissa is also upset, but about them not doing the secret knock. Maurice points out that it'll give them away if it's just someone in good spirits knocking, and they knock back. Melissa suggests that she say, "It's me, Melissa," before she knocks, but Keith doesn't see the point. They don't have any sense of trauma. Melissa's father has gone to the Rattus. There have been a lot of complaints today. He sent for the rat catchers as well, which, according to Melissa, would be the perfect time to break into their shed and solve the mystery of the bootlace tails, which would be more satisfying if there were 4 kids and a dog, but she'll make do. After dark she'll come and pick them up, and they can shimmy the nodger. "Can we?" asked Keith. "Yes, with a hairpin. I've read about it hundreds of times." "What kind of a nodger is it?" asked Maurice. "A big one, which makes it easier, of course." After she's gone, Keith asked Maurice what a nodger is. "Dunno. A lock, maybe?" "But you said—" "I was just trying to keep her talking in case she turned violent. She's gone in the head if you ask me. Not living in the real world at all. Dangerous Beans is a bit like that. Our lady friend thinks everything's a fairy tale, and in fairy tales when someone dies, it's just a word." The number 3 Heavy Whittlers squad were taking a rest, and they'd run out of ammunition in any case. No one felt like going past the trap to the trickle of water that dripped down the wall, and no one liked looking at what was in the trap. The rats are talking about death and what happens after. Not to your body, which gets eaten or goes dried up or mouldy, but the inside bit. The bit in dreams. Dreams had been a big shock when they started to happen. The rats theorize that there must be an invisible part that lives inside and is in dreams, and death is like a sleep, only you don't wake up, so where does the dreaming part go? One of the rats brings up the bone rat, who they say comes and gets you when you die. Another protests. They haven't seen the bone rat come and get fresh. "Ah, but they say you only see it if it's coming for you," said another rat. One, nervous to the point of almost madness, says, "So how do they see it? Life's bad enough without having to worry about invisible things you can't see." All right, what's been happening?" Darktan pushed past. He'd brought nourishing with him. It was never too soon for a member of the trap squad to find out what happened to people who get things wrong. "I see," he said, looking at the trap. "What do I tell everyone?" "Not to use tunnels that haven't been marked clear, sir." But Fresh never was a good listener, and he was keen to get on with it. Darktan examined the trap, and tried to keep his face fixed in an expression of confident purpose. He'd never seen a trap like it. Nasty, a squeezer rather than a chomper. It had been put where a rat hurrying to the water was bound to trip it. His expression remained blank. "We've got to go. We're finding traps all over. We'll work our way back to you. No one is to go further along that tunnel. Understood? Everyone say, yes, Darktan. Yes, Darktan, the rats chorused. And one of you stand guard. There could be more traps up that way. What shall we do with fresh, sir? Don't eat the green wobbly bit. There were too many traps, too much poison. Even experienced members of the trap squad were getting nervous now. He didn't like unknown things. You found out what unknown things were when they killed you. It was like no town they'd ever found. The whole place was a rat trap. They hadn't found a single kiki, not one. And on top of everything else, young rats were worrying about things. Things you couldn't see or smell, shadow things. There was no room in the tunnels for that sort of thinking. Life was real, practical, and it could get taken away real quickly if you were not paying attention. He noticed Nourishing looking around and sniffing the air as they trotted along a pipe. That's right, he said approvingly. You can't be too careful. Never rush in. Even the rat in front of you might have been lucky and missed the trigger. Yes, sir. Darktan could sense the fear spreading. It worried him. If the changelings panicked, they'd panic as rats, and the tunnels of this city were no place for a terrified rat to be running. Panic in the rat world, was a kind of disease that could be caught too easily. The rest of the trap squad has come across a new poison. An affected rat was lying on its side. Its feet were curled up, tight little fists. It was whimpering. Darktan took one look and knew that for this rat, it was all over. I could bite her in the back of the neck, a rat volunteered. A kind thought, but that stuff gets into the blood. Find a snapper trap and put her in. The rats react with shock, and one starts to protest. The hairs around Darktan's face stand out, and he reared up and showed his teeth. Do what you're told, or I'll bite you, he roared. And warn all the other squads, Darktan bellowed. This isn't rat catching, this is war. Everyone is to pull back smartly. No one touch nothing. We're going to... What is it this time? A small rat crept up to Darktan as the trap hunter spun around. The rat crouched hurriedly, almost rolling on its back to show how small and harmless it was. Please, sir, it mumbled. This time we found a live one. And that's the end of chapter 5. A live rat at the end of chapter 5. I cannot do a gruff voice. I'm not good at gruff voice. That's as gruff as I go. Ugh. I might get better at this. Maybe. I don't know. I'll see you next time. Bye.